Please welcome Arlan Hamilton and Aisha Tyler.
Stronger, fighting for what you believe. Only then you will perfectly be that special someone rising above.
Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Aisha Tyler. I'm really thrilled to be here with you having this conversation with Arlan Hamilton, the founder of Backstage Capital and Backstage Studio. You know, this is a conference, and so I brought my phone. My notes are on my phone, because I'm, you know, I'm like little kids with the digital stuff. So I'm not updating my Facebook.
Can we have a moment to say that I'm sitting next to Aisha Tyler right now? What has happened in my life?
Oh, so very much. We're going to talk about it. We have not even close to enough time.
Right.
That video was wonderful, even though I've spent some time with you personally, and I've done a bunch of research about you and your life. What strikes me is, you know, coming out of that early music background, that you have this uniquely rock and roll way of moving through the VC world. Of course, you picked a Norwegian punk band for your first client. And what I mean is a disregard for traditional patterns and ways of moving through systems, and a manifest self-actualization. This is who I am. This is what I want. If you don't like it, you know, you can suck it. So, you know, and screw the rules. I think that served you really well. What about your early rock and roll time has informed how you work in VC?
I mean, I think it's definitely part of that. It probably goes even further back. Even in the music world, I was sort of an outsider, because I remember writing to the president of Live Nation, Michael Rapino, and saying, hey, there are not enough black women tour managers. What do you do? And, you know, I would always sort of buck the system. But my mom taught me early, you see something, say something. And I've been doing that since I was 5.
And we talked about the video, you know, growing up as a tall, black, queer woman in Texas. I'm sure at times felt very isolating as a child, but has made you, at least in my perception, a particularly resilient adult. And I grew up as a tall, black, straight woman in the Bay Area, and I always tell other people with kids that feel like outsiders, you're gonna have a really cool grown-up. This kid is gonna be an iconoclast, because they didn't try to fit in, so now they don't have to fit in. What about your outsider status as a child? Or maybe it didn't feel that way to you. What have you carried forward into your adulthood?
I've definitely felt like an outsider most of my life. And I felt that in different groups of people. That was a thing. Around black women, I felt like an outsider. You know, maybe because how I talked at a certain time, or the way that I would find a Norwegian punk band. I
was gonna say, when you're into Scandinavian punk, you know,
or, no matter what it was, I felt like an outsider. I definitely went to a mostly white school and had no money, and there was always something that was weird about me. I grew up as in a religion that people didn't particularly like.
You were a Seventh-day Adventist?
No, I was a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
But I'm no longer, and it kind of makes my face screw up when I say it. But you know, I always had these things, but even then, you know, not believing in it, I always felt like if I saw someone who was an outsider, I wanted to protect them. I wanted to protect their right to be themselves, and I wanted to protect my right to do that too. And so I think everything that I've done since being a child, all of these things that people think of as risk or like outlandish, I think it's always been this pursuit to protect people's dignity and their uniqueness, and that's followed me.
Yeah, I love that about you. I remember you saying that, you know, a part of your childhood experience was that you had to knock on doors. You know, Jehovah's Witnesses come around and knock on doors, and that made you better at hearing no, that no wasn't, you know, no, you've heard so many no's.
For better or for worse, right? I definitely do not condone the religion, believe me. But yeah, you get these doors thrown in your face as a child and as a teenager. You can kind of take 100 no's. You can take those 100 no's to get to the one yes, for sure.
Right. Now, something I've seen, and you saw it in the video, is that Arlan has this relentlessness, this pursuit of her goals that is just undaunted by setback. And we really don't have enough time to cover it here, but you know, you just had many times when, you know, you were pursuing a certain goal and you know, you hit a road bump. I think this is important to talk about in a women's conference, because you have this innate aggression, which I think we typically see as a pejorative term. It's not. I mean, when people, it's a compliment. Man, that was aggressive. Women are not socialized to be aggressive, and it is one of the biggest obstacles to our own personal advancement. And you were punished in school for it, for being talkative, for asking questions. When did you learn to embrace your own inner aggression?
When I noticed that there were people who had even less of a voice than I did, who would come up to me in class. I mean, as early as like maybe 10, they would come up to me and say, "Thanks for saying that," because I couldn't say it. I was too shy to say that. And so once I realized it wasn't about me, I don't want to sound too haughty or anything, but once I realized, oh, it's not about me, and I can be helpful to others by kind of going through this, and I figured out at some point, I guess you have to figure it out a few times, but a few times I figured out this too will pass. All of the bad stuff, I was bullied, I had a bunch of stuff happen, and all of that I always felt there was something that was going to happen in my life. Like I always felt like that a lot of people would know me for some reason, and I thought, let me just get to that. Let me just get to that moment where it's okay, I guess.
Well, that aggression has served you very well because in 2015, you set this goal for yourself. I'm going to invest in 100 companies by 2020.
Yes.
And we had a conversation a while ago where you said that you were literally laughed out of Wall Street boardrooms when you said that out.
Yeah, Silicon Valley and beyond, I had people laugh in my face. And
like
say,
actively?
Yeah. People that were successful and had something, and I was homeless, and saying, I'm going to do this. Now, I can understand how it could be odd to think, but they just didn't think there was a chance. There was no chance, and my mom's here. There's no chance in heck that I'm smart, okay? There was no chance in heck that I would be able to pull that off. And so I had people kind of escort me out. I had this one woman actually escorted me out of the room as she was laughing and like, just come back when you're more realistic.
Wow.
And I don't know where she is anymore. Couldn't tell you her name.
Well, and in fact, you were wrong because you didn't fund 100
That's right.
companies.
They're exactly right.
You beat that goal by a year and a half.
Yeah.
How did you do that, Arlan?
Well, I definitely started the company, started Backstage Capital, got the first investor, Susan Kimberlin, and just kept knocking on doors. And as I was doing that, I had for the 2 years prior to that, 3 years prior to that, I had also been talking to founders. And so I was going through it with them. I understood what they were going through, and these are founders that were women, people of color, LGBT. And so once I finally had 25,000, 50,000, then 200,000, I would immediately wire that over to the company that had been waiting in line for months or years. And I did that for the first 60 or so. And then I was able to attract a really awesome team, and now we're more than 30 people across the country, and now even in the UK.
So, for those of you who haven't heard this particular phrase, there's a very common saying in communities of color, specifically in the Black community, that you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. That underrepresented people, excluded communities, have the same ability, the same knowledge, the same passion, but they have to push much harder for people to take them seriously. They have to push much farther to get the same access to resources. And that informed your approach to funding these companies, because a lot of times when people hear, oh, well, she's funding underrepresented communities, communities of color, LGBT, oh, it's good work she's doing. Oh, she's making the world a better place. Well, no, I mean, your main motivation is business. And the idea is that these people, if they have a good idea, if they've made any headway, they've done it under extreme circumstances. They've had to do much more with much less, so they're a better bet.
That's right.
Than your normal
for the most part,
founder.
yeah. I mean, Stephanie Lamkin was on stage earlier today, and you saw what her life and how far she's gone, and she's one of the companies we've invested in, and it's just, you have 100 people like Stephanie. It's just a no-brainer, and for every $42,000 that a Black woman raises in venture in a seed round, a white man raises nearly 1.2 million. And she's expected to, like you said, not only do the same, but do 2-4 times better just to be seen as on par with that person. My take on this is, what if we put her on equal footing? How far does she go? And I've said that I want to be someone who builds and gives out Iron Man suits for these founders and sees what happens.
Okay, that dovetails to my next question, because And I did a lot of research just about you and about the world that you move in. And one thing you talked about is the concept of failure. You know, I think a lot of times when we're trying to start a business or an endeavor, we're afraid we're going to fail.
Sure.
But failure is an innate aspect of any business venture. And typically in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of tolerance for risk and failure with white founders, right?
True.
Like if a white guy fails, well, that idea failed or that iteration failed. The problem is when a black founder fails or a founder of color fails or a woman fails,
Exactly.
well, women are risky.
Yes.
So how are you helping your founders both manage for risk and then tolerate failure when it happens?
I think that just like me, a lot of them and most of them have already figured that out on their own, and that's the point, that I'm able to recognize that. And it's true. I mean, I have met men, and it is women across the board I've found, but I've met white men who have two $5 million raises off of back of napkin. And I'm over here like scraping together 20,000 to, you know, hopefully push over to a black woman who's been doing this for 20 years and may have even taught that kid at Stanford. And this is a true story. I actually had that happen. And so what I find interesting is when things are sort of a downturn in the market, how our founders and people of color in general are so resilient that they are already prepared for that. Other people are freaking out. And so when they're prepared for that, and I just try to be as realistic as possible and be there as a first call.
Yeah, and the idea that I've heard 100 no's, like a no is not the end of the road.
I try to share some of my journey, and you know, at 34, I was sleeping on the floor of the San Francisco airport and on food stamps. And now I'm sitting next to Aisha Tyler and having invested in these companies. And
it's so extraordinary.
Incredible.
And so many wonderful things have happened in this extraordinary fertile period of time for you. You, Arlan Hamilton, were the first non-celebrity black woman, as well as the very first black woman in tech and VC to grace the cover of Fast Company magazine. Yes. And I'm sorry for the dad joke, but you were in very good company because the other black women that were on that cover were Oprah, Beyonce, Serena, and now you get the single name Arlan. You've just moved on to a single name moniker now, Arlan.
it's normal. That's normal.
Yeah, exactly.
That's normal.
You only need the one name.
Couldn't believe it.
How did that feel for you, and what does that mean for other women and underrepresented people trying to move into the space?
It was. My mom, who is here today, says that I say surreal too much, but it was surreal. It was bonkers, but very soon after that kind of faded. I just felt this responsibility and this honor of representing. And I've had people from all over the world send me pictures of them holding the cover, and Fast Company themselves have said that it's one of the best-selling copies they've had. And that's not because of me. You know, I mean, I'm adorable, but it's mostly it's because people are seeing themselves.
Yeah.
There are a ton of women and people of color and LGBT founders who have not seen themselves on the covers of business magazines, and they're starting to see that now. And that's what that meant to them.
Yeah.
So very honored.
And it means so much to people coming up behind to know that if that person can do it, then I can do it.
Absolutely.
Something very good happened last week.
Yeah.
Would you like to share it with everybody?
Well, yes.
This is a new news.
Yeah, I haven't said it to anyone outside of my team and my family. I signed a book deal with Penguin Random House last week.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what the book is going to be about?
So I can't say too much because it's actually really early to talk about, but it is coming out the first half of next year. It'll be mostly what people ask me about, which is how I did it, how that can be applied to their lives, because I think that this is all for us, so I'm going to spend a lot of time on that. And yeah, it was cool, and I think it's going to be fun to roll that out over the next few months.
You guys, you can see that Arlan is adorable, but that outer adorability, it just covers the most fierce and relentless core. And I really do encourage you to learn more about her and her journey in Backstage Capital, because they are doing something extraordinary. But primarily, this is a business-forward company. They are betting on good bets.
Absolutely.
This is not a charitable organization. This is a business organization that is going to change the landscape of business as we see it. And I encourage you to take your inspiration from someone who will not stop. Ladies and gentlemen, Arlan Hamilton.
Thank you.